Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be all over the place today. Got some headlines pulled up here. Like always, we're going to be reading between the headlines. Why do we have to do this? Well, it appears as though the mainstream media can never seem to shoot straight. It's always some kind of backdoor agenda, and they craft their headlines and stories that way in order to manipulate us along a preset path. And so we have to come here and cover as many headlines as we can to get the general big picture as to where all this is headed, right? So we're going to rewind back to the Super Bowl, and everybody saw the Super Bowl commercials that seemed to be really pushing and emphasizing the electric cars. Now, we talk a lot about this electric kingdom and where all this is headed, but with no practical game plan for how to charge all these electric vehicles, they're selling the people of the world a pipe dream, aren't they? Now, we saw this coming last year when we started talking about the electric kingdom. And this article even goes as far as to say that there is an electric vehicle revolution. So, get ready for long charging lines, travel delays, skyrocketing electric costs. You guys, electricity is already economically impractical. You know, as soon as you plug in a few space heaters and or an electric stove, we've all seen it happen, your electric bill skyrockets, or you plug in an air conditioner. Well, now imagine loading up the electric grid with millions of cars, electric cars. Of course, the cost is going to go up. And I don't care if they were giving these things away for free. I wouldn't buy one. Who sets the rate, the electricity rate of how much they're going to charge you? Well, of course, supply and demand, right? So when some bureaucrat says that we're burning too much natural gas to make that electricity, which 60% of electricity is made that way, they simply black you out. They simply go, oh, we're going to turn off portions of the grid. It's become overburdened and overwhelmed, and we've got too much natural gas going into the atmosphere to produce the electricity, so let's just turn it off for a while, and you guys will get by. Or here's another scenario. Somebody says, you didn't get the smack scene, so you don't get your car charged. And make no mistake, they're going to start linking your ability to charge your electric car with your social status. In other words, let's say you didn't pay your car registration. Well, when all this goes electrical, combined with Jive G and the ability to have real-time data, they'll just simply link that into all the charging stations. And you'll come up with a red flag that says you didn't pay your car registration. You can't charge your car. This is where all this is headed, and this is why I don't like it. For some reason, gasoline, natural gas, it represents some level of freedom because it is an older technology, and so they can't go around like flagging people. They can't send a message to a teller somewhere out in the middle of nowhere that says you can't fill up your car tank with gas. I mean, we really have to think about the implications of all this, because as we enter this electronic age, it'll be much easier for them to place controls on people. Now, their whole business plan on this seems obvious to me. They don't know how they're going to electrify the electric kingdom. In other words, they have no idea how they're going to source all of this electricity, and that's a scary thought. Because if they did know how they were going to source it, then they would know that they'll be limiting the power supply to those who comply or those who have the money to be part of it. Look, you guys, the elite already showed their hand. They don't really care about, for instance, the tourism economy. They don't care about it. Look how easily they shut down hotels, travel, tourism, restaurants, entertainment. And they did it for a sustained period of time. 3 years we've been going through this, and still everything isn't open unless you have a smack scene, right? So that tells us they don't care about your ability to travel. They can travel all they want, the controllers and the elite, because they're above the law. So they can get their little fake cards and their fake stuff that they pay for. They probably pay big dollars for it. And then they have all the doors open to them, and they're not following the rules anyway. We've seen it time and time again. These bureaucrats running around with no masks on and doing what they want, but then penalizing us for not doing what we want. The problem with that is that they have the power to crush us, and we don't have the power to hold them accountable. So, welcome to backwards world, where our elected officials don't care. And so let's think about what else is connected to travel and the tourism and all this. Well, of course, it's you getting in your car and traveling, right? Your mobile autonomy. And they already sent a message about that as well, haven't they? That they can operate their system, their economic system of trade, without you involved in it. They can literally still make all their money with you locked in your box, staying at home. They don't need our travel. And if they were that bold about VidCo-19, what makes us think that anything will change when they make fossil fuels go extinct? Let's read this article, because this is crazy. What happens to old batteries in electric cars? Well, you'd be shocked. So, apparently, 100 new models of electric cars will be debuting by 2024. That's scary. With the electric vehicle revolution in full swing, one question keeps popping up. What happens to the batteries in EVs once they wear out? Now, we've talked about this next part. They talk about these batteries slowly losing capacity over time, just like your phone. If you guys have experienced that, it's frustrating. You buy a new phone, and sometimes you get a bad battery. Seems to work good at first, and then after like a year, all of a sudden the thing won't hold a charge for more than an hour or two. Well, the same exact thing happens with electric vehicle batteries. So now you're stopping more frequently. Your mobility has decreased significantly. And it even says here, once this happens, the driving range will be noticeably reduced. EV batteries can be serviced, and individual cells inside batteries can be replaced if they go bad. But there's a risk after many years of service and several 100,000 miles that the entire battery pack may need to be replaced if it is degraded too much. The cost can be between 5 and 15 grand and is akin to an engine or transmission replacement in a gas car. So, we talked about this before, and it's crazy. Like, when you research this, it's not really clear. They don't really clearly define this. And I remember when we covered it, we got a lot of pushback from people that support electric vehicles, saying that these batteries only have a very insignificant, reduction in efficiency after even 5 years. Well, this article seems to be telling a different story. And they're very careful with their language about how they talk about the battery and the battery life and the costs associated with it. And they have this careful language because they don't want to scare people away. It's a clear agenda, what they're trying to do, to electrify our entire society. They don't talk about the future costs of electricity. I mean, shouldn't they, if they want everyone to get on board with this, shouldn't they pretty much say, oh, okay, we'll set the price for 30 years for electricity. You'll never pay more than this. That might help people want to get on board with this. But notice how they're not defining the future costs of electricity. They're not defining how they're going to source the electricity for this infrastructure. You guys, this is a massive infrastructure. Along with the Jive G, which is also right alongside it, a massive infrastructure that requires lots and lots and lots of electricity. Tens of thousands, even millions of base stations all around your neighborhoods, cities, and outlying areas. All of that requires electricity. What is this going to do to our grid? Nobody knows. No one's studying it. No one's looking at it. And I believe the grid can't handle it. But they want us to believe it can, but really it can't. Make sure you guys are with me. We'll keep going with this article. This is very interesting because this is going to be our future. And we might as well get on board with it and understand it now so we can try to have a contingency plan against it when the day comes. The worry for most environmentally conscious people is that there isn't a system in place to deal with these decommissioned parts. After all, lithium-ion battery packs often run the length of the car's wheelbase, weigh close to 1,000 pounds, and are made up of toxic elements. Can they easily be recycled, or are they destined to pile up in landfills? Oh, the claim here is aren't very difficult to get rid of these electric batteries, because even if they're outlasted their usefulness for an electric car, they're still worth quite a lot to someone. Okay, so now we're going to have some market for used car batteries. That's scary. There's a strong demand for secondary life batteries. It's not like when your gas-powered engine dies and it goes to the scrapyard. Well, at least the pieces of your engine, your gas-powered engine, can be recycled. Most of it, it's metals. They can just go to the recycler. It's probably actually worth something. I remember when I had one of my cars picked up in the junkyard, paid me like $250 for the car, and they picked it up themselves, towed it right off. So notice how they're still dodging the question. Okay, let's say there is a secondary market. So still, after the secondary market, you have a battery with all the stuff in it that needs to be disposed of, and you can't just throw it in a landfill. Let's keep reading this. Nissan is using old leaf batteries to power mobile machines in its factories around the world. Leaf batteries are also being used to store energy on solar grids in California. Once solar panels capture energy from the sun, they need to be able to store that energy. Okay, so they're going to let people buy these batteries to attach to their solar panels. I can't imagine the government would allow that to happen. No way. Without strict controls and them getting their piece of the pie. The old EV batteries may no longer be optimal for driving, but they're still capable of energy storage. Even as secondary life batteries fully degrade after various uses, minerals and elements like cobalt, lithium, nickel in them are also valuable and can be used to produce new EV batteries. With EV technology still in relative infancy, the only certainty is that the recyclability needs to be built into the manufacturing process to ensure. So they don't even have a plan yet. They're talking about this as if it's in the future and how they're going to need to recycle. Despite the concern about the potential cost of repair when replacing these batteries, we haven't seen it as a common issue in our exclusive car reliability data. Such problems are rare. Well, no, they're not. I mean, I've seen comments from you guys in the comments section. Dozens of people sharing their experience about their electric cars and saying they'll never buy one again. So obviously they're trying to whitewash this. And then you got situations like this. There is a danger component to these batteries. And they don't have the bugs worked out yet, even with this technology. And they admit that they don't. These things catch fire. In this case, an entire cargo ship caught fire, and they couldn't put it out because of how intensely the lithium batteries from these electric cars were burning. We're talking tens of millions or maybe even $1 billion in losses if this ship were to sink to the bottom of the ocean. Let's read this. Fire aboard a cargo ship in the Atlantic Ocean may have been intensified by electric vehicle batteries from luxury cars like Porsches and Bentleys. Look at this ship on fire. Can you imagine? Look at the black singed edges of this thing. The crew actually had to abandon ship. Let's read this. The Felicity Ace, which is carrying 4,000 cars, caught fire in the middle of the Atlantic last week. So think of this. Think of all of that lithium and all that garbage from those cars falling into the ocean. And think of the ecological disaster that this has created. Port official told Reuters that lithium-ion batteries in electric cars were keeping the fire alive. Massive fire on the cargo ship that's adrift at sea in the Atlantic and hauling thousands of luxury vehicles may have been intensified by the batteries in the electric vehicles on board. 22 crew members on board were evacuated and rescued. However, the vessel remains smoldering off the coast of Portugal's Azore Islands. Now, if you know anything about the Azore Islands, it has some biological diversity there that isn't seen anywhere around the world. And this is a place where now they're having, ships just burning out of control, dropping lithium and everything else down into the ocean. This captain from the nearest port told Reuters over the weekend that lithium-ion batteries in the vehicles aboard the ship were keeping the fire alive, and specialty equipment was needed to extinguish the blaze. The cars are electric, and part of the fire is that batteries are still burning. Gosh, how many times do they have to repeat that? So, specialty equipment. Now, we've heard of these things catching fire. So, who knows? Did they catch fire by themselves? Like, what really happened here? Just crazy. So, they do not have the bugs worked out with this. And so, they want us to all get on board with this pipe dream that they don't even have a long-term plan for. Now, here's another example of how the controllers have already sent their message that they don't need us. In this case, nurses. The disposable heroes. Now, understand that all the way up until now, we've been told that only about 1 to 3% of the nurses didn't comply with the smack scene mandates or asked for some kind of exemption. Well, now the real truth comes out. According to this Reuters article, they're saying the reason why that number was so low is because most of them already quit before being faced with the decision. They already quit. So now you can see how disingenuous these people are and dishonest when they report this stuff, when they try to frame some kind of agenda and story that they want you to take and believe. Here's the truth. 1 in 5 nurses quit. 1 in 5, according to this Reuters article. That's a lot, you guys. They quit because of the mandates. So we have these shady statistics hiding the true public reaction so they can steer the rest of us down a preset course. Now, if people knew back then that 1 in 5 nurses, the heroes that we were told, there were signs everywhere, if they knew that 1 in 5 quit, maybe the public sentiment about the mandates would have been far different. Wouldn't it have? I mean, talk about misinformation. Now, what they told us was we had to do all this stuff because, 1 in 5 or 2 in 5 nurses who could have gotten sick would have been a tragedy. Or emergency essential workers. We had to keep them healthy. But notice it wasn't 1 in 5 that got sick. It was 1 in 5 that quit. And instead of them recognizing that and going, wow, none of them got sick, or very few got sick, they just quit. They should have pivoted. They should have changed gears. But the agenda was already in place. The machine was already in place. And so they lied from the get-go. Anyway, these heroes are disposable because now they're simply replacing them with the National Guard. Let's read this quick article here. National Guard fills in as nursing assistants amid healthcare worker shortage. It says here, Madison, Wisconsin, when Jones Galeta joined the National Guard, he never imagined he would be one day training as a nursing assistant. Never in my wildest dreams, he said, as he completed his 2-week training course in Madison. The VidCo spam endemic exacerbated an existing shortage of healthcare workers, with about 1 in 5 quitting. since February 2020. Notice they didn't get sick, they quit. Our healthcare workers are in desperate need of our help. They're beyond exhausted. Last month, state officials asked the college to train National Guard troops to help alleviate the strain at the hospitals. So now we have militarized healthcare in America, right under our noses. In February, 70 soldiers turned certified nursing assistants were deployed to their postings. And you know that they're fast-tracking these people. They're not getting the full training that some of these nurses had to go through, years and years of school loans, hundreds of thousands of dollars in school loans. You're sitting through all those classes to get their degree. These soldiers are getting fast-tracked. How fair is that? The next wave of 80 trainees will start work this week. 2-week certification. Unbelievable. This is the future. So, I tell you these stories and read these stories so that you can understand where the, what's the word I'm looking for? Loyalty lies. Loyalty should be to each other, not the controllers who see us as disposable. What have they done for us lately? Oh yeah, they paid everybody a couple $1,000s to play ball, but they got it all back, didn't they? They got it all back in inflation. They got it all back in these mandates, and the pharmaceutical companies got rich. They got all that money back times 5 probably. So, this is the truth. Let's go to this next story. There's some more gaslighting in this story, and we're going to get into the green and the mixed messaging. Now, before I get into all this, understand this is by no means a judgment about people who smoke the green, all right? I'm simply telling you what really happened with the legalization of all this. Because when you turn on your TV, what do you see? You have multiple celebrities blazing it up. Seems to be a popular thing even to do here on YouTube. You get these celebrities on these, on these vlogs and stuff, blazing it up. And of course, the millions of people watching are probably, many of them are doing the same thing because that's part of what you do, right? We're all getting high with, who knows, whatever celebrity they have that they're interviewing. And then you got state after state legalizing it. And you got many, many more not decriminalizing it. And then when people's guard is down, whammo, right? Whammo. You still have to pass drug screening tests for most jobs, truckers included. Sitting there listening to their favorite talk show, radio talk show, while they're driving their truck down the street, thinking everything's great, joining in and partaking, and then all of a sudden, no, you need to pass a test. So, in general, those who smoke the green are still being discriminated against by society. But there's this mixed message. It's accepted, but you're still being discriminated against. Now, why would a government do this? Why would they say one thing and do another? Why would they set people up like this? Because they get off on your misery, don't they? And they profit off of your dysfunction, off of your dependencies. So anything that they can create that they know you love, alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, as long as the government can have their hand in it, they will promote it and push it, and then on the back end, still mess with you about it. Think about it, you guys. Yeah, alcohol is legal. But look at, you can't even get in your car after a certain time of the day. You can't have a glass of wine with dinner without worrying about getting a DUI, getting pulled over by some rogue cop. I've seen it happen a dozen times to friends, family. I've never had a DUI, but it's a mixed message, isn't it? Some of these cops sit outside of places. They'll sit outside of a bar. So why have a bar where people are drinking if you can't drive home? Now, I'm not promoting the driving after you get hammered, but think about the way things have changed and think about the hypocrisy of it. Okay? Because if they really wanted to do what was right by someone who came out of a bar, or if they really were concerned about that person, then they would say mandatory Uber rides, wouldn't they? Right? Or mandatory pickup, and they wouldn't have even a parking lot in front of some of these places. But instead, there's this cat and mouse game. So they let you try it, and then they bust you. And what does that do? Get you into the system, tens of thousands of dollars to the court, hundreds of dollars to the school that you have to go to, thousands of dollars to your attorney, and thousands of dollars to the insurance company when your rates go up. Everybody gets a piece of you. I've seen friends pay $20,000 by the time it was all said and done, and increased, what do you call it? In car insurance and all that kind of stuff. So let's read this article about this, and then I'm going to show you the taxes that the government makes, both state and federal, on the legalization of the green. So the green testing for truck drivers is becoming a leading cause of growing national trucker shortage. Now they're trying to blame the shortage on these truckers not passing the green test. Wells Fargo exec said that drug testing for the green is causing a shortage of truck drivers. As more states move to legalize the Can bus, standards for drug testing truckers have become more stringent. 60,000 truckers have been temporarily taken off the road for testing positive for using the green. 60,000 truckers. Now, if there was ever a setup, I don't know what is. Because that's crazy. Basically, they're criminalizing it when they said that they're not going to criminalize it. When the message in the media is that it's been decriminalized, they're still criminalizing it. Now, you could make the case here that this was done on purpose. When we read between the headlines, I can imagine that this whole testing thing was probably a recent thing, and that this all dovetailed into the supply chain shortage, and that they wanted to do this to basically hold us hostage as a nation. Let's read this. While the grueling lifestyle and aging workforce has led to a national shortage of truck drivers, Wells Fargo exec believes there's another issue exacerbating the labor crunch. Green testing. According to Chris Harvey, drug screenings paired with the nature of the job, which often requires truckers to spend weeks on end away from home, has led many truckers to leave the industry. The issue will continue to push that price even higher, worsening a surge in transportation costs that have left consumers facing price hikes and shortages. It's really about drug testing. We've legalized the green in some states, but obviously not all. What we've done is we're excluding a significant portion of the trucker industry. The role of the green testing and employee screening has been under debate in recent years, especially as the labor shortage continues to place more power in the hands of the workers. 49% of U.S. adults have used it at least once. To date, 37 states have legalized the use of the green for medical purposes, while 18 have cleared the substance for recreational use. But in recent years, the trucking industry policies have become more stringent. Truck drivers are randomly drug tested on a quarterly basis. Now look at this, recent years. So this dovetailed right in with the beginning of the spam-demic. So now you see the agenda. They tighten the screws on these truckers right when we needed them most, which is making the supply chain issue worse. Now, why would they do that? Why would the government do that? Well, they would do it because they want us to suffer. They want to keep us in our homes and want us getting by with less. This is all part of the plan to make you angry so that you just go along and get your smack scene so that everything can go back to normal. They wanted you to feel the hurt. There you go, right here, you guys. 2020, right at the start of the spam-demic. They implemented a law that requires all truck drivers who have failed a test to be listed in a federal database so that other trucking companies would avoid hiring them. So basically, they got blacklisted. Unbelievable. And the green falls under this. So now we're starting to see the full picture. The law impacted 100,000 truckers. 56% were reported for the green use, so over half criminalized. This is a travesty, and no doubt very much a part of the trucker shortage, I can imagine, along with the mandates for the smack scenes and everything else. Now, how does the government profit off of our dysfunction? Well, let's take a look at some of the state taxes and how much each state is set to reap billions of dollars across the 50 states on the green, on taxing the green. Look at the breakdown here. This is what legalization looks like. A multi-billion-dollar industry that is lining the pockets of the politicians. Here are the states, you guys. 23 million in Alaska. California, $1 billion in tax revenue. Colorado, $400 million in tax revenue. Illinois, 52 million. Massachusetts, 81 million. Nevada, 105 million. Oregon, 130 million. Where's all that money going, you guys? Washington, $500 million in tax revenue. Is this what you envisioned when you were pushing to have this legalized? I remember my friends were so proud of their debate skills in arguing for the legalization of the green back in the 90s and the 2000s. But I don't ever remember them mentioning the fleecing, the commercialization, and the micromanagement of the growers or the high taxes that would prop up corrupt states. Never heard them talk about that. But it was just cool to be able to light one up wherever you wanted and not be bothered. And that's all they thought about. Well, there's far more to this, you guys. The power went from the hands of the people to the government. You gave up all your rights. And as I shared with you guys, my daughter works in a dispensary in California. And she says weekly, she's got federal and state agents auditing them, looking through all their books, probing them through every orifice. They're walking around with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash because it can't be put into a bank according to the law, which creates a safety and security issue for that dispensary. I mean, I can't imagine anybody would be stupid enough to try to rob one of these places, but they're driving this money around in cars. It's unbelievable. This is the antithesis of what people who I know who smoke stand for. It's opposite. It's far worse now. You'd have been better off with the old way and taking your chances. Not to mention, you get, when you are involved in this industry, you get put on a list. You've given up all your privacy. Look at the federal taxes. This is the federal now. We did the state. Now look at the federal and how much they get. Alaska, 50 cents an ounce. Wait, is this the right table here? Yes, this is it. Arizona, 16% excise tax. I think an excise tax is 16% right off the top. Right off the top. California, 15% excise tax. And then all this other mumbo jumbo down there. So we're talking on average between all the states between a 10 to 15% excise tax is pretty much the average here that the feds get on top of it all. So as a person who partakes, you're getting less product for higher prices because all these taxes have to be paid out, and you're paying right into the what we call now the CIC, the Cannabis Industrial Complex, which will mentally enslave you, and you will be at the mercy of these people, and creates a situation where they give you a false sense of security, saying that it's all good, but then you find yourself in trouble with the law, like the truckers. So that's what's going on with that. Now let's get into some different stuff. Now, again, it wasn't meant as a judgment to people that partake. I'm simply trying to help you understand that the way to do that would have been to demand that it was decriminalized and forget about all the other stuff. Just say, look, you can't criminalize this. It's a plant. It's no worse than alcohol. Leave us alone. That would have been the play, not everything else that came along with it. Now, Thump just went live with his social media sensation to keep the right-left paradigm going. I wonder if he'll pardon all the crapper hole attendees if he gets reelected. Let's read this. Thump's social network has launched in iOS. So this is on Apple. So it's like Twitter, apparently. I don't know if any of you guys have signed up for this yet, but it just launched a few days ago. And let's see what they call it. Truth Social. Okay. Now remember, we were told, as far as we knew 2 years ago, it was the end for him, right? When the crapper hole event happened, they made the world believe that this man would never speak again on any platform. It's over for him, blah, blah, blah. They fed us all this stuff, right? And what that did was it strengthened the right-left paradigm because the people on the right were really upset about that. How can you wipe this man away? How can you censor him? And yet here we are right on iOS proving that it was never over for him. It was just part of a big lie because the right and left work together. It was never over for him. They need him as a right-wing leader. And now he's right on there on Apple iOS launching his new social media platform. Interesting, right? They were talking about sanctioning him and freezing his assets and everything else. He was supposed to have lost all his business ventures and everything, right? This is what they told us was going to happen to him. Now, I don't promote that. I don't believe that that's what they should do to anybody, but this is what the line that the mainstream media was feeding everybody. That he was over. He might even go bankrupt, be arrested. None of that's happening, is it? They just talk about it happening, but it's never happened. It's just to make the right angry and to keep followers. The best way you can help a person stay afloat is you create a martyr out of them. You pretend like they're being prosecuted and they get more and more and more and more popular because they're seen as the underdog. And that's exactly what they've done with the Thump brand to keep that right-left thing going. So we've got Truth Social. First statement from a verified account tied to Truth Social Chief Product Officer Billy B, who told people to mark February 21st on their calendars. Interesting. 2/21. We're currently set for release in the Apple App Store for Monday, February 21st. Incidentally, the 21st marks the President's Day holiday, provided the network doesn't suffer hiccup like the one it did last fall when a prankster claimed the Donald J. Thump username and posted an image of a defecting pig. The launch will mark Thump's return to social media. Now, I'm saying his name differently because, not to make fun of him, but because, anytime you talk about him, you get banned on YouTube. Before a test version of True Social was pulled down last fall, the website's code showed it ran on mostly unmodified version of open source software, Mastodon. Wait a minute. Isn't a mastodon like a shark? I don't know what a mastodon is. Sounds like a shark. In October, the Software Freedom Conservancy accused the Thump Media and Technology Group of violating Mastodon's license by not sharing the platform's source code. So, Truth Social won't stray too far from the Twitter formula. People can use the network to post truths, platforms equivalent to tweets. I wonder if Apple iOS is going to start censoring him after he's on the platform. Who knows? Interesting. So, I don't know if any of you have signed up for that. Let us know what you see. If you have, it will be interesting to see, what your experience has been. Let's get on to some of these last stories here for the day. Well, we got parents in New Jersey finally standing up for their kids. I guess mask mouth is now a new thing. And according to this article, and according to some parents, dentists are seeing noticeable uptick in cavities and gum disease in children because of what they call mask mouth. Let's read this article. Mask mouth and CA. The debate over masks in Hillsborough School continues. In a virtual meeting on Thursday, the Township Board of Education restored calmness just a few days after it was forced to postpone a meeting because some members of the public refused to wear their masks. So they tried to meet virtually, and they, what else? Let's read down here. Township police were requested to come to the meeting on Monday because people refused to wear their masks. It says they can't make any change at these school board meetings. Well, why have a school board meeting if you can't make any change? That makes absolutely no sense. Isn't the whole purpose of it so that parents' voices can be heard? Like, what recourse do parents have if they can't go to a school board meeting to have them change the rules? They're saying this is above our pay grade and, we can't change anything. We can listen to you, but we can't change anything. Well, you can send the feedback up the chain then. Wow. 2 residents spoke against any mask mandate at the virtual meeting. This is complete child obtuse, adding that these dentists are beginning to use the term mask mouth to describe cavities and gum disease caused by wearing the mask. Human body was not designated to wear a mask, she said, especially with fabric or material made in China. Now, if YouTube's reviewing this, I'm simply reading an article. Another parent said there was no evidence that masks prevent VidCo. He also said that the masks harm the psychological health of the children. Are they going to be afraid of an illness that's invisible to them? What else are they going to be afraid of? So, parents are making a lot of great points, some of which I agree with, and people are upset. They're finally starting to stand up. I'm thinking probably because this has gone on so long. They sold us on this was going to be, temporary, a couple seasons, that it would last, and now we're into 3 years and people are like, this is going to go on forever. Well, all the people on this channel tried to tell people that, didn't we? We're like, this isn't the end. This is, once they have power, they never let it go. We tried to tell them, and people are like, oh, that's just a conspiracy. Well, now here we are 3 years later. And still, now they're claiming to reopen everything, but it's only for people who have the smack scene. It's open for them, but not for anyone else. Now, here's another intended consequence of the spamdemic. I call it intended because they fully intended this. The re-stratifying of America is underway. Rents are so high now that middle-class people now have to live like poor people. Rents reach insane levels across the U.S. with no end in sight. Let us know in the chat how much your rent has gone up. I know mine did. Went up by $150 a month. So, what is driving the demand for housing? Well, lack of construction. That's what's driving the demand. And there's a pinch on building materials as well. Bo Jiven promised to fix the supply chain issues, didn't he? But as we just read in previous stories, there are some very concrete and significant reasons for the supply chain issues. One of which was the truckers being criminalized for simply smoking the green. And of course, all the mandates in place. Bo Jiven blames the labor, doesn't he? But here's the thing. If you pay enough people and you pay them enough money, then you'll get the labor, won't you? And here's the other thing. These private sector mandates are still in place. And this probably is accounting for at least 25% or more hit on filling those positions for people that don't want to get smaxinated or wear a mask all day or happen to be smoking some green. So there are very concrete reasons that could be loosened up to help people to get back to work and help the supply chain issues. But now you're starting to see they don't care if the supply chain issues are in place. They don't care about inflation because the rich people are making money. It's pretty simple, you guys. Get rid of all the mandates and the economy will return to normal, won't it? Now, why won't they do it? And why, in the midst of all this, with this weakened economy, why all of a sudden now are we trying to get tough with Russia, which would cause even more economic pressure for the lower and middle class? Forcing people into the military, right? Because this is what happens. You start having economic problems in your life, and for some people, the military becomes an option because of that. Not because they really want to go, but they're like, okay, at least they'll feed me, and this is what they want. Now, let's read this article about rents. Crystal Guerra, 32, poses a picture outside her apartment when she has to leave after her new landlord gave her less than a month's notice that rent would go up by 26%. Is that even legal? I guess in some places it is. Here, this one was in Miami. She works in marketing while also pursuing a degree part-time. Had already been spending 50% of her income on rent prior to the increase. Now, if I was president, and some people aren't going to want to hear this, and I would never become president, but if I was, I would make a maximum percentage of your income that could be charged by a landlord for rent, no matter what that is. If you make $2,000 a month, there's a maximum amount of your income that a landlord can charge you for rent, no matter where, well, not no matter where you live, but, a set, like say you're a single person and you have a studio. Your studio should not cost more than a percentage of your income, even if you're at minimum wage. You don't need Section 8 housing for that. You don't need any of that. There should just be a law that says that. Well, we don't need any more laws, right? But anyway, let's read this. Crystal Guerra's Miami apartment has a tiny kitchen, cracked tiles, warped cabinets, no dishwasher, hardly any storage space. Here's another thing I'm noticing. The quality of rentals is going down the tubes. Used to be, there were rules about this, where when you moved into a new place, everything had to work properly when you rented somewhere. You can't just be renting out slums. But nowadays, this is common. You get what you pay for, basically. There are no rules. You could have stuff broken all throughout the apartment, and they'll still rent it out for a high price. Guerra was fine with the apartment's shortcomings. It was all part of it being a 32-year-old graduate student in South Florida, she reasoned, and she was happy to live there for a few more years as she finished her marketing degree. That was until a new owner bought the property and told her he was raising the rent from $1,550 to $1,950. What? So, this is highway robbery is what it is. Highway robbery. So, she moved out, and so she's just going, this is crazy. So, rents have exploded across the country, causing many to dig deep into their savings, downsize to subpar units, or fall behind on payments. In the 50 largest U.S. metro areas, median rent rose an astounding 19% from December 2020 to 2021. See how all those stimulus checks just got gobbled up? They all just got gobbled up. Now, I know some of you are landlords and owners of properties, and you're probably not liking some of what I'm saying, but understand the look. Here's what should have happened through this spam-demic. There should have been a moratorium on your loans that you pay for your place, because obviously you need to pay those loans, right? And there should have been a moratorium on any price gouging, or there should have been rules on price gouging for landlords. So, in other words, just because everyone else is raising the rent doesn't mean you just get to raise your rent. Just because rents are going up. I'll give you a prime example. I'm here in Connecticut. And because of all this new surge of stay-at-home jobs, all the people in New York who claim to be going along with the spam-demic and the mandates and thinking it's such a great idea to put all these rules on everybody, this is what the media tells you, right? Well, that's not the case because everyone's leaving New York. They're upset about it. Where are they going? They go next door to Connecticut. They get a stay-at-home job here, driving up the price of the rentals all around me. That's what's really happening. So you don't hear people reporting on these kinds of stories. So they should have put a moratorium on loans to the banks. Okay, so let's say you're a landlord and you have a mortgage and your mortgage is $2,000 a month. And so during the spamdemic, you don't have to pay that mortgage until the government figures this out and lets people go back to normal. Because anytime a government starts sticking their fingers and forcing people to stay home and forcing people not to work, then they've got to make other concessions too. You can't just take one bite out of the sandwich. You got to eat the whole sandwich. And the whole sandwich is, if you're going to force businesses to close, then you have to not make those businesses pay their mortgages and pay their loans. And if you're going to, force people not to be able to work to pay their rents, then those landlords shouldn't have to pay their mortgages either. Do you see how you shouldn't start messing with the economy? Because you have to make everybody whole. You just can't pick the winners and pick the losers. You can't just give out loans that people have to pay back later, because people are not going to be able to pay those loans back, are they? So this is the state of affairs with the rents. Let us know in the chat how much your rents have gone up over the past 2 years. Now we're going to get into some international stuff for the last few minutes of the show. Because look what's going on in Russia. Russia is apparently sending in some peacekeeping forces to 2 independent parts of the Ukraine, or so Russia claims they are independent. So they are sending peacekeeping troops into the Ukraine, and the U.S. doesn't like it. So it looks like we're going to sanction Russia. Now, what's the bigger play here? What's really going on if we think between the headlines? Well, why is everybody fighting over the Ukraine is my question. And I think it's all about distraction. Here you have the world uprising against VidCo-19 and the smack scenes and the mandates. And we've had pretty much 3 years of world peace, haven't we? During the spamdemic. And now all of a sudden they decide they want to start beef with each other when magically everybody came together under VidCo. Do you see the play here? Now, outside of this whole NATO business and this ally and all this stuff, I don't really know much about the Ukraine and why the U.S. and Russia are fighting over it. But I can tell you this, whatever it is not in the best interests of the people of Ukraine. I can tell you that right now with certainty. This is about strategy. This is about world domination. This is about making every country in the world fall in line with the world agenda. That's what this has to really do with. Now, it's funny because this country, I call them Iran down the street, they aren't having it, at least with certain respects. They are allies with Russia. But, everybody wants to beat the drum against Iran down the street as the enemy of the world. Well, look at this. They just returned to sender 1 million doses of the smack scenes that originated out of the United States. Now, this is probably a smart move, but you got to ask yourself why. And you also got to ask yourself, why are we sending our stated enemy doses of anything when we claim to want to shut them down? This is unbelievable. Let's read this one. Iran down the street has returned almost a million doses of VidCo Pokemon stickers, smack scenes, donated by Poland because they were manufactured in the U.S. TV quoted Mohammed Hashemi, an official in the country's health ministry, as saying that Poland donated 1 million doses of the British-Swedish AstraZeneca Pokemon sticker to Iran down the street. But when the smack scenes arrived in Iran down the street, we found that 1 million doses of them, which were imported from Poland, were from the United States. So, rejecting the smack scenes. Let me go back on the chat here and hang out with you guys for a few minutes before I pop off here. Those are pretty much the updates and the headlines for what's going on around the world as we start to formulate a picture of where all this is headed. So they're replacing VidCo-19 and the spamdemic now with aggression in Russia and Ukraine. And it's all intentional. Why didn't they start this in the middle of the spamdemic, right? Why now? Because they're ratcheting that down and they're ratcheting up something else. It's so obvious to me, these people, because of the timing of everything. They can only do one project at a time. They never do multiple projects at once. How miraculously over the last 3 years were there no wars and everybody was seemingly getting along and handing soccer balls back to each other. And now all of a sudden we're on to something else, right? Bread is $3 and milk $4. Gas $3.44 a gallon. Election coming up. Half of Canadian politicians are WEF grads from American politicians are WEF grads. Yep, they all learn in the same places. So how much did your guys' rents go up over the past 2 years? Eric says, Casey for president. Well, if I ever did become president, you would know I was compromised. So, because you have to be compromised to get through all the different levels and ceilings to get there. But I can tell you, if I was, that's what I would do. It's highway robbery. You shouldn't, if someone is working 40 hours a week, even if it's minimum wage, it shouldn't be more than, I would say, I don't know, a third of your income for rent. More than a third of your income. And basically that should be on the application. What your income is, and that's where they set the price of rent. And look, if that doesn't prop up, ownership and, someone being a landlord and owning something and renting it out, then that's so be it. Maybe there's something wrong with this whole system of real estate. I never liked real estate. It never did anything for me. Real estate is a game of the elite. It's a game of the rich, not the game of the average man. I owned 2 homes, one in Merced, California, and one in Santa Maria, California. And I didn't make money on either one. I ended up having to pull a loan out on another one just to pay it off against my car. And the other one I lost in a divorce. So this is a game of the rich. And people can talk all they want about how great real estate investment is. But I can tell you, I've never made money on real estate investments ever, because it's all timing. And we know that life it's up and down, isn't it? It's up and down. And as soon as you start having to divide assets, who loses? The person who owns assets. Who wins? Attorneys and the bank. Right? They always get made whole. But it's the person playing the game that gets hosed in the end, right? All right, you guys, I love each and every one of you. I'm going to pop off here. We'll be back on here tomorrow, and with more either between the headlines, or I'm going to try to get into some of these other series. I know you guys like to mix it up a bit, but it is good to stay up on current events and see what's going on around the world. I love each and every one of you guys. Have a great day. Take care and be safe.